exercise again. And so in the video, this video is another departure from my usual format of reciting poetry. I've done before a couple of handwriting analysis videos on politicians, and today I'm going to do one more. Okay, Gorbachev. And this is a very small sample, of course, like some of the other, just the thing that you hear. High idealistic impulses at times, and you see this by primarily this stroke here that has a definite upward tendency and goes out quite a long way, showing quite a lot of enthusiasm toward ideals and theoretical possibilities, that sort of thing. He's very stubborn if he thinks it's useful. This is a classic stubborn stroke here, this final stroke, which stops in the lower zone with a great deal of pressure. And a lower zone of strokes such as this, ideally speaking, should come back at least some distance toward the middle zone. And that's why it's called stubbornness, instead of being directed toward accomplishment. Is capable of great charm and camaraderie. And this is partly shown by this upward stroke here that we've been talking about. And notice that he has some generous garlands in his name, an easy sort of relationship to with other people, but yet he still has some indications of secrecy in this interstroke here in the circular formation. Quick investigative mind, but not complemented by deep analysis. So you see the upward stroke like this, for example, and up here, same thing. And this indicates the investigative mind. He wants to get facts and information. Okay, he has great investigative nature, as I've just said, but he doesn't analyze very deeply what he discovers or what he obtains by investigation, because he lacks sharp formation in the lower zone. He has yielding strokes instead of V's that go downward. And so then his quick investigative mind is not complemented by deep analysis. And he's very protective of his important names, as indeed most people probably are. Now this stroke, which I've talked about before, also indicates a kind of a covering stroke. In other words, it offers some protection against what this middle zone represents down here, you see. And that's why I say he's protective of his important names. Okay, next please. Okay, here we have Ronald Reagan. And when Reagan was elected, many of us were a little bit disappointed because we didn't think he would amount to much. But as it turns out, I think he had a really good press looking back to the future. And his writing is on the whole favorable. Very tight organization. You see how he has very even, almost straight baselines with very little variation in up and down activity. He's fairly consistent in the interlinear spacing between the lines, and he, like one of the others we mentioned before, has some indication of keeping himself on a tight leash, because he almost interferes with his line. Sometimes you see this structure interferes, and this one almost does. And so he has to always be careful and give himself enough time for his individual projects. Unflagging concentration. Small writing throughout. No slips into large formations. Unflagging concentration. Somewhat idealistic, but anchored firmly in practicality. And so you notice that the high T bars, for example, these are indications of one who was interested in the abstract, at least to whatever degree, and been in some things, and yet they're firmly connected to the middle zone, the world of practicality. So all in all, he seems to have a pretty good grasp of things. Constructive degree of ego. Look at his two capital R's here. They're perhaps a little bit on the large side, but that's okay, because everybody has to have some degree of self-confidence, of self-image. It just verges on ostentation. It's not really big enough to be out of proportion. A moderate degree of tension, although he has very heavy pressure, yet he is so busy in practical affairs that he doesn't let this degenerate into useless tension to any great degree within himself, and he's always able to get rid of most of it in a constructive way. So that's why I say moderate degree of tension. Okay, next please. Okay, Margaret Thatcher, the first female Prime Minister of England, of course, as you recall. And many of us believe that she had a great part in saving England from various kinds of like economic destruction, well, not real destruction maybe, but the downturns in various ways. And she stood up to the unions, which by and large controlled England pretty much at that time. And she, so to use a common parlance, kind of put them in their places. Gigantic willpower. Okay, looking at her signature, you can see why I say she has gigantic willpower. The M in Margaret is composed of this initial stroke that it covers the middle zone formation and comes down and stops in the lower zone. And so she completely protects then whatever this middle zone structure represents, the way of what she wants to accomplish and what she has in mind to do. Gigantic willpower. And look at this T bar. Oh, that's two of this T here. It's a smaller letter, but we still have this self-controlled stroke. And look at the T bar, how heavy it is and long it is. Great enthusiasm and pressure, determination, a generous dollop of optimism, it goes upward. Suburban continuous concentration, like we talked just now about Reagan. And you know, they got along very well, Margaret and Reagan and Ronald did. No sense of vanity or ego hunger. Although she does have this big stroke here, but it's mostly a covering stroke that shows her determination and not so much her ego, although it does have some value for that. She needs considerable time to herself. Notice the wide spacing between words. And this is a primary indication of one who has to have time alone, away from others for reflection and so on and so forth. Okay, frequent flights of fancy. I think we talked about the high T bar, and we have one up here, and these other strokes I mentioned before. Okay, next please. Now who's this guy? Oh yeah, Osama Bin Laden. So here we have Barack Obama, and his term is about over, of course. In November, he is going to be booted out of the White House. And so anyway, we just have his signature here as well. But now if you take a look at the huge capital letters in his name, and both of them are of the same range of size, 10 or 12 times the size of the small letters, huge ego, which may or may not come across in his actions and speeches. But anyway, he has it. And look at this stroke, the final stroke on his first name. It invades the O and stops there with a heavy stroke. There's a conflict between his very personal aims or goals or feelings and his heritage or his life, represented by his last name, because he has this conflict between two. It's as almost as if he is trying to fend off or deny what is represented by his last name to a degree in favor of what he is personally, as shown by his first name. So it brooks no opposition, even though it might not be apparent to a parent. While appearing to be comradely, he is very aggressive. Look at this final stroke here. Very aggressive, like he's fending off, shoving off something. And since secretiveness is his guiding principle, partly shown by the illegibility of the writing, would you be able to know this was his first name and this his last name unless you knew who this was? This is one sign of secrecy, not wanting to be known for what you really are. Projections of coziness make it possible to conceal his high estimation of worth of his own goals. And I've said this in so many words in different ways just a couple of minutes ago. And so going back to his middle zone letters here, whatever this letter is, I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it's an indication of control. You know, it's got this loop that holds something down. And he has this extraneous stroke here also, and this, who knows what this vertical stroke is supposed to be down here. And then he goes and stops here at the edge of the O and begins there, and this little circle here is supposed to be who knows what. Here I am again, not having to look at the specimens over my shoulder. And so now we've finished with these several handwriting specimens of important people in the past 75 years or so. And I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so below. Thank you. Goodbye.